Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Creatively Free. I'm your host, Ariel Grace, and today I have the distinct pleasure of having Will Devine with us today, and he is a practicing recovery coach who has a lot to share around tools and techniques around how he works with clients to help them in the arc towards creativity from recovery. So, Will, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Ariel, for having me. I appreciate it. Glad to contribute.
So I would love to start out by hearing a little bit more around what the ordinary life of not being in recovery is like.
So, ordinary life for me as a teenager, a young teenager, was parents boring, school boring, family boring, neighborhood not much going on. And so I started to get into alcohol and weed and, hanging out with my friends. And that became the ordinary world, going to the garage, going to the attic, basement, wherever we could find space and availability of alcohol. And so through my teens and 20s and 30s and even 40s, the ordinary world became Friday is happy hour. And what happy hour meant to me was going to the bar. Maybe smoke some weed and have a good time, being a little crazy, being a little exciting. And then in, I'd say probably in my 30s, I realized this isn't what I want to be doing every weekend. And it became every night. And I had partnerships with women who were also drinkers. And so that became our life together. So then the ordinary world became very lonely, sitting at the bar, just looking, just staring and thinking, when am I ever going to stop this? And why do I want to be here even? And it just became habitual. It became the story. Really, the story in my mind and in my life was, well, if you're feeling lonely or you're feeling any emotions at all, really, just go drink and suppress them all. Any creative urges that would come up, I would just push them down. So that became the ordinary world of not really feeling much of anything, being numb and being lonely. Really, I could be lonely in a crowd and was very, I'd say, chained to the feeling of suppressing emotions rather than chained to the substance. I think a lot of people believe the substance is what chains you. But I think in my life and my experience with people in recovery, it's more about what you get out of it. And there are plenty of other addictions besides substances.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the ordinary world became like this really boring thing again, just like in my early teens. And I thought, well, why am I even doing this?
Yeah. It's interesting to think about, you mentioned happy hour, and really the culture of most mainstream society is oriented around going out for alcohol, as a social way. And when you mention suppressing emotions, I'd love to hear more on that. Were you ever taught about your emotions or how to relate to them when you were younger?
No, not at all. Other than the presentation of everything is fine, everything's wonderful, don't be sad or mad at anyone because that's not appropriate. And as the youngest of 5 children, I was sort of like just watching everybody for what they would do. And the only person who could express emotions was one of the parents. And that if we ever expressed, I'm really mad today, that's not okay. And I never received any real education about feelings or emotions. And I think that's really important for kids to understand that emotions are emotions and they're tools and they're data and they're information for us. It's not necessarily to be taken personally. If somebody's having emotions around you, you don't go, well, don't do that around me.
Right.
So, no, I really didn't get any education about emotions.
Yeah, it just seems like it ties sort of directly to what you're saying because, because you weren't empowered or educated or given space to like understand what was going on your internal system with
Yeah.
emotions and thoughts and everything, then instead of that, you were given substances as a young age. And what I'm hearing you say is those seemed to help you quiet having to deal with all of that.
Yeah. And I had, at some points in my life, particularly early 20s, I started understanding my own creativity. And I started to really feel it in my body. And I would listen to songs and I would feel this sort of like a little bit of a chill when you get a chill, you know that? And it would just resonate through my whole body when I'd hear a song and I wouldn't understand what was going on. And I would try to, be really up and get into it. But all the friends I had were like, "You're really strange," and so then I had to fit in with them and drink and do shots and smoke weed and just
So you
sort of,
had moments, it sounds like, when your soul or what your creative urges would come back, but you still didn't have a chance to,
yeah.
you didn't feel empowered to respond. I think one of the phrases you used is then along came the call to adventure.
Yeah, so several times I experienced that call from the hero's journey, um, and I didn't know, and I didn't answer the call several times. But there was this one time in college when I was really, really intoxicated, and I was walking home from a party, and, and I thought, I'm really tired. I want to go sleep in the park. I thought it was a park. So I kind of curled up from next to a tree and I thought it was a tree. But when I woke up, the sun was coming up, the birds were chirping, it was spring, so it was kind of chilly. And I looked up, it was not a tree, it was a headstone.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, oh, I didn't really think about it much at the time. But later in life, I was like, that was really the first time I was being called into this world of recovery. And there were several times when I had DUIs, and, that became a resentment. Why did I get a DUI? And it didn't really resonate. There was even one time when I was driving home from a party and I pulled off the road while I was driving. And I think I fell asleep and the car came to a stop. It was like a stick shift car, and I wasn't pressing the gas anymore. And I think I dozed off, and I woke up, and I was on the side of the road safe. And I think that was another time. In my 40s, I managed to quit for about a year. And then I just decided I'm not going to, I want to be around my family, and my family has a lot of drinking. So, I wouldn't say everybody's getting drunk, but they're drinking. And so that became like, oh gosh, I have to fit in again with my family. I don't want to be weird. I don't want to be outcast. And I eventually succumbed to that temptation. But the real call came from, instead of trying to fit in with everyone, it came from my insides. I'd say it was, oh, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe 4.5 years ago. I knew you then. And I woke up in the morning and I heard a voice, and I don't think it was my voice. Maybe it was my subconscious. I don't really know. Maybe it was my soul. And the voice said, today's day. I said, what day? In my head, I'm having this conversation with the voice. The day you have to stop drinking. No more. And I said, what? What are you talking about? And it said, well, you need to, and it's time. I was like, but what if I can't? What if I can't do it? And the voice said, no, you can do it. Just do it. Just stop. And so I did. And I got a lot of flack from my partner at the time because we were drinking buddies.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, I didn't expect it. I thought that, hey, everybody's going to be happy for me. But no, it's not the way it works.
Yeah.
When you kind of, when you cross that threshold, whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is, into a new world, a new world of adventure, there's going to be resistance. You have to really work, and you have to have some guidance, and you have to have I think you have to have internal motivation.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people that have, they've gotten a DUI or gotten put in jail for something, and the judge says, you have to get into a recovery program, you have to get sober. And so they do it, but it's an external kind of a forceful, you have to do this. And some last for a while, but a lot of people will go back to it as soon as that kind of time period is over.
Right. So tell me more about sort of what recovery really means.
Well, a lot of people think recovery means to get sober or to get out of depression or to reduce your anxiety, which is all good and it's part of the process. And I did that for a while without really understanding what it meant to be recovering. In early sobriety I was in an angry and sad and sullen state of mind. And then I discovered that's not working. I was still responding to old stories, old traumatic events, relationships, and family situations. And I was still living in a state of, kind of limbic dominance. And so then I read about, I'm really interested in etymology of words. Where did they come from? What does it mean originally? And I discovered the word recovery comes from a French word, and it is actually the conjugation of a verb. And I don't know how it's pronounced. I think recoverer or something. And it means you recover. You get something back. You get control of your life. You get real friends. You get your creativity back. And you get your health back. And you get to see what your potential is. And then you get to explore and tap into that potential. And eventually you empower yourself to do all of these things. So it's not a backward looking process. It's forward looking. You got to go get it. So I think a lot of people, if we use that metaphor of the hero's journey, and what I was doing, I shouldn't speak for a lot of people, but what I was doing was I was staying right on that threshold, and I was waiting and sort of, I was not committing. And that there was a day I remember there were about 6 things that happened that I was like, oh, I'm getting traumatized. I'm getting traumatized. And then I thought, no, I'm not getting traumatized. I'm just responding to an old story that keeps repeating itself. And so that's the day I decided to learn about neuroplasticity and how we can really rewrite that old story into a new one. And that propels us forward. So I feel like one of my calls right now is to help people understand what recovery is. Not, and I don't want to badmouth programs or anything, but some people stay in a state of sobriety and they think that they're getting something again. One time you talked to me about this phrase. I really liked it. You said, reclaiming lost soul fragments or something like that.
Yep.
And I think that's what recovery is.
Yeah.
It's you got to go like kind of get all this stuff and put it together again, because you've done this to your life, and you have to realize it's not anybody's fault. It's not even my fault. It's just a process that I need to now go get all this stuff and put it together and make a new life out of the old life. And I just love that image of soul fragments being reclaimed and reformed and creating a new, like, your life is like a work of art and you're creating it again.
From my experience, it can be something that you were telling stories, memories
Yeah.
of experiences, and visit those experiences and call back the parts of yourself that, like in the imagery of that, pulling back that person with compassion for being understanding what they were, where they were,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, it's a beautiful and powerful image of what it takes, because you can't sit still and recover anything. You got to go out there and you got to, metaphorically, you have to get it. You have to get outside of your old, like the angry, sad, sullen. That was me. Somebody else may have a different picture of what they were like, but
And what I'm kind of gathering from you is they might not have a before that they want to return to, right? So it's an invitation to creating a life of joy and creative sovereignty that you may have never experienced.
yeah. Yeah, and one thing I notice now is that I am able to go back to some of the music that I loved and that really just got me charged up without feeling like I need to drink or smoke weed or go to a party. I love the music and the feeling it gives me. And I'm starting to notice in my body that tingle, that thing, that energy that's going up through my body sometimes. Doesn't happen a lot because I think I did a lot of damage. But the fact that it's beginning to happen again makes me think, oh, this is good. That was the real freedom for me, I think, in the beginning, was the music. 70s music, and some of the 80s music was kind of cool for me, but that, just the beat and the loud and the drums and everything were just coming through my body, and I really feel good about it now. But in the beginning, I could not listen to Pink Floyd or Led Zeppelin or anything, because it would just remind me of those days in the garage feeling, like, well, we just got to hide from everybody. And so I think I was coming to the music. My family was very musical, and my brother had this great stereo system. And so in the beginning, it was all about the music. And now what I notice is I also do that thing that I do with words. I listen for the deeper meaning of the music. What's this really about? It's not about somebody, doing this thing. It's about our own hero's journey.
Mm.
It's about our own adventure into new things and how we can break free from the old. And we don't want to eliminate the old. I don't believe in that either.
Yeah. You're just building upon it.
Yeah.
So you have a varied amount of tools that you've collected that you work with clients around. I'd love to just share some of them because they're
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one tool that I find helpful and easy, really easy to do, is this therapist I worked with. He uses a tool called inner changing, and he taught me how to use it, and he taught me that I could use it with my clients. He kind of authorized me. He didn't give me any certification or anything, but that's okay. So inner changing involves a couple of things. One is to trust your intuition. And he's got this little booklet that he gave me. And you go through this process of kind of thinking, okay, I want to think of a number 1 through 7, just whatever comes to your mind right now. And it's 3. Okay, so I go to page 3, and then there's 15 neurolinguistic kind of programming statements. And you go 1 to 15. All right, 7, boom. And then you pick an exercise. And the cool thing about this is you don't just say words. The guy used to be a sports psychologist, and he would help people with their bodies and with their minds and sort of trying to get into that moment of recognition of yourself. So you pick a number 1 through 6, and then you land on an exercise. So you've got this statement and you've got an exercise, and the exercise might be something like draw the infinity symbol in front of you with one hand and then the other hand and then both hands, and say the statement out loud to yourself. So the statement might be like, I am confident and intelligent and creative. And if you sit there and do that without the movement, it doesn't do as much for your brain. These movements are designed to stimulate right and left hemispheres, which creates much more power in the new story. And you might not believe it at first. And that's why I tell them you got to do this over and over again. So there was this one client who said she didn't want to go out of her house, and because she's embarrassed, because she got drunk and may have, ripped up some flowers from the neighbor's yard. I said, well, don't worry about what they're thinking about you. Just go out and walk your dog. And if you find a space where you feel safe, then do this, touch opposite shoulder with your hands and do one of these empowering statements. So we pick the statement, and then we pick the activity and the time of day. And she came back and she said, you know what? This really works. After 10 or 15 minutes, I start to believe it. But it's very much like going to the gym. You can't just do it one time and have any benefit. And the thing I like about interchanging is it's easy and it's cheap. I mean, it's basically free.
Yeah.
And you get to choose what you want to say. If you don't like those statements, you're going to say something different, maybe not quite as extreme, but you're going to go through this period of, oh, that's a lie. And then you go, no, it might be the truth. I wonder if it's the truth. No, it's a lie. It could be the truth. It's possible that it's the truth. I am compassionate. I am powerful. No, that's a lie. And then eventually you work towards that thing that you want without a lot of money spent or effort or anything like that. So that's one of the tools.
Wow.
Another tool.
Wait, before you move on, I want to reflect on this one. That's cool. It reminds me of a lot of other techniques that therapy and modalities use around like alternating binaural sound, or it reminds me of tapping, So I just want to like emphasize that's it, and it sounds very creative because it's pretty open-ended, right?
It
Like
is.
in how you design these exercises. Basically, what I'm hearing you say is you attach an affirmation that you want, whatever it
Right.
is, with both-sided kind of crisscrossed energy field.
Correct.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And in all of the neuroscience, kind of neuroplasticity that I've studied, I found that anything that stimulates right brain and left brain is going to take up more real estate and be more powerful of a story and a technique. Because if I just stand there and I go, I'm creative, I'm compassionate, I may get into a state of like, I don't like this anymore. But when you move, you're doing something, and your body knows it too.
Yeah. Very cool. Is there another one you wanted to share?
Yeah, so one tool I like to use is some kind of short, easy meditation technique for some people. Some people are not familiar with meditation, they're not comfortable with it, especially people in recovery, they're wary. And so I just like to emphasize that any time you become mindful and aware and start accepting what's going on in your head as they're just thoughts, they're just feelings, they're not you. You're bigger than that. And just kind of work people through this breathing techniques, or there's a really cool one by a guy named John Kabat-Zinn, which is online, and it's a full body scan. That's all it is. There's nothing more to it. And I think that more kind of middle of the road meditations are good for people in early recovery, especially because they're not that scary, and they're not going to challenge any spirituality that they may already feel. So it's basically just mindfulness. And then the third one, which I've taught, I don't know how many people, probably a couple hundred, is how to juggle. I think when I was 13 and I first kind of got in trouble for drinking, I didn't really get in trouble, but I was told I had to be in my room for a couple nights. Okay, fine. After dinner, I go up to my room. I didn't want to read books. I didn't want to do anything. It's kind of athletic, kind of, a lot of energy. So I taught myself how to juggle. And I think, looking back on it, that was probably my first attempt at recovery, is juggling, because I was in control and I was doing it. And I went from a state of I can't to I can very quickly. And that's why I teach people how to juggle, people that want to learn.
Right.
And so I've become a pretty good juggler. And I've also done research on juggling, and I'm just fascinated by the science of it and the social aspect of it and the balancing and the really, I think it's an external version of EMDR, if you've ever heard of that. There was a study done in Japan where the researchers wanted to find out if juggling had an effect on women who had been victims of domestic violence. I don't know why they chose juggling, but that's what they did. And I thought that's really cool. So they took half and they said, you're just going to have talk therapy. And they took the other half and they said, you're going to have talk therapy and we're going to teach you how to juggle. Is that okay? So they did. And they found that the women who had been taught how to juggle were much more likely to say less harmful things. They were able to say, yes, that's something that happened in the past. And they had lower hostility scores, lower anxiety scores. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. I wonder what's going on. And the researchers thought that because you're doing this with both hands and you're looking back and forth, that it had a similar effect to EMDR, but maybe a little more powerful because again, you're getting physical and you're in control. And I think a lot of addiction comes from a feeling of being out of control. And that's the only way out. It's the only way to escape that feeling is to, go gambling or drink or whatever it is. So I'm really thinking that I should promote this a little more. I should do more to just try, because part of my emotional fear is that I put something out there and people don't like it. So I just go back like a turtle, just put my head inside and become a turtle. And that's not courageous. I think I need to be more courageous with the things that I've studied and I've done and I've taught people how to do. And so what if it challenges the establishment? That's kind of why we're here, right? In this interview. I am really much more confident than I used to be. I'm much more able to have conversations with people and take risks. And so the ability to take a risk without fearing rejection is much higher. There's still going to be rejection. Anytime we get creative with anything at all, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to say, you can't do that. And we have to, as creative people, we have to say, yes, I can. I can do whatever I want to do. And I wouldn't have been able to say that in the drinking years or the, super depressed years. And I don't have the least bit of craving for any substances right now. And so that's huge for me because it doesn't matter to me. I am free. Yeah, those chains are shaken off, broken off, whatever. You get to choose what you put into your body and what you put into your mind. And the earlier you choose those things for yourself, the more powerful you're going to be. The substances are not bad. Nobody has a tendency to abuse a substance because you can't abuse the substance. You can abuse yourself. The other thing I would say is, I don't know where I heard this, probably from some popular neuroplasticity person or another, but where your attention goes is where energy flows. And I just love that for any kind of recovery is where are you putting your attention? Because that's where the energy is going to flow. That's where your creativity is going to flow from, wherever you put your attention. And I like to think that it's just as simple as saying, I can. I don't know how long it's going to take, and I don't know if I'll ever be fully recovered or perfect or anything, but that's kind of not the point. And I also want to say thank you for hosting this project that you're doing. I think it's really awesome. I've seen some of your other interviews, and I really like that you're putting it out there and you're creating a space for people to feel free.